Moving right along, 1943, after we just talked about the success of Boy Smith and how it continued. Well, in 1943, it didn't miss a beat. The Jackets were 10-0-1.
Powerhouse.
No other word, as you said. No other word to describe it. Powerhouse. In 1943, only 2 regulars returned for Springfield.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He turned out with a pretty good team with only 2 regulars.
So let's keep these people up to date. 1941 season, we lose the big back, right? And they go do what they do. 42, we lost some guys. Dude, now you coming to 43, and you've basically, in today's terms, you lost your whole roster. You only got 2 returning starters. And we finna get what we finna get right here.
Yeah, and Springfield returned 2 players, and it was center Paul Mitchell and halfback Billy Stevens. Center Paul Mitchell was that Eastland Heights connection. I grew up in Eastland Heights. My dad did too, and I wanted to mention that. Mr. Paul Mitchell was the center, returning center for the Jackets. One of many Mitchells down the line. We'll mention all those down the line, as I think there was like 5 Mitchell boys that played for Coach Smith as we go right along. Anyway, the Jackets going to start 1942, and they've got some people who will see some action in 42. They are Ray Dodd, Billie Jean Holman, who is great-great-grandfather to a current Jacket, Mac O'Brien, Henry Dark, Buck Bryant, and William Wallen. And the Jackets are to start the 43 season at DuPont. With only 2 starters returning, DuPont was heavily favored over Springfield. They had a real good team the year before. They were heavily favored over Springfield. Springfield didn't win. They didn't lose. It ended in a big slugfest, 0-0 tie. And Wallen, Dodd, and Stevens stood out for the Jackets. I imagine they stood out on defense since there wasn't any scoring. But that's a good way to start the year. Not a loss, that's for sure.
And we seeing that Coach, he likes, it's not the first time. He started the season at DuPont.
Right.
He likes going down there, I guess, and getting what they got. And I remember I did my research, and I'm like, because it's not a school anymore. I did my research, and I actually played junior pro football on that field against the Old Hickory Bulldogs.
You played right there it's on the road there on 45.
Right there across the street from the train track. I said, this is crazy.
My dad played on that field too. I used to ride by there going to work in Nashville a lot. And DuPont, here's something, people, when you're talking about them playing DuPont. DuPont was basically Rayon City, Old Hickory. Most of the families that lived there moved from other parts of the country or moved there to work because of DuPont, the plant.
Yep.
DuPont is still there. It's not called that now. I don't know what it's called, but it was the DuPont chemical plant at that time in Old Hickory, and they had some great teams over the years. In fact, that's where the old I've almost had a train of thought. The Gaines boys played at Vanderbilt. They all played at DuPont. And DuPont closed in about 85, I think it was. And those kids go to Hunter's Lane now.
Wow.
Hunter's Lane, Goodlettsville, they all go there. And some of East Nashville goes to Hunter's Lane. But anyway, that's the story on DuPont. Up next for the Jackets was West Nashville. And the Jackets defeated West High of Nashville 13-6 on a Saturday afternoon at Vanderbilt's Dudley Stadium. It's kind of interesting. Sam Pickering got the first Jacket touchdown just before the first half ended. And Bubba Wallen had a 20-yard TD run for the Jackets in the second half and began to go on to win the ball game 13-6. Over West High. Up next for the Jackets, Father Ryan. And the Jackets roll over Father Rhyme 39-0. Here's some article from some of the newspaper articles. It says, add James Nixon to the list of fine running backs at Springfield. The 142-pound junior is a cousin to former Springfield star running back Charles Nixon. It's his first year to play football for Springfield. Nixon started the scoring with a 12-yard touchdown run in the first quarter. Bubba Wallen passed to Ray Dodd for a touchdown and threw another to Billy Stevens for a touchdown as the Jackets rolled over Father Rhyme 39-0. Up next for the Jackets, still unbeaten, only one tie. They face Isaac Litton. Springfield remained unbeaten as Springfield defeated the Lions 13-0 to remain unbeaten. Sam Pickering scored on a short run in the first half. Later in the third quarter, Billy Stevens scored on a quarterback sneak. The Jackets had 16 first downs to Isaac Litton's 5. Standouts for the Jackets were Matthews, Swallows, Nixon, and Pickering. As the Jackets move right along, next, TIS, Tennessee Industrial School. Bubba Wallen and Sam Pickering and James Nixon ran for touchdowns as the Jackets defeated TIS 33-7. Jewel Risher ran for a 20-yard TD later, and he threw a touchdown pass later on to tight end Billie Jean Holman for the touchdown. As the Jackets defeat TIS 33-7. Up next, Portland was defeated. Springfield jumped out to a 33-0 lead at halftime and coasted on to a 40-0 win to remain unbeaten. Up next, NBA in a great big ball game.
And here's an article from the Nashville Banner in 1943. It says a fellow who signs himself as Fred Hood. And here it is. Fred Hood takes Springfield High's Coach Smith to task for false information on the Yellow Jackets' weight to wit. I went out to the stadium Saturday to see the small, inexperienced team from Springfield play West. I formed the above impression after reading statements accredited to Boy Smith in local newspapers. Smith has a well-balanced and smartly coached 11, and I am firmly convinced they are as heavy as any team among the local high school contingent. They will certainly outweigh West, Central, Ryan, and NBA. Smith is only kidding himself by giving out false information on his swell club. You hit the ball in the dome, Fred, old fellow. This is what Coach said. You hit the ball on the dome, Fred, old fellow. But don't you know it isn't cricket for a football coach to admit he has a heavy or good team. The Jackets, like we said, beat Hillsboro. Springfield High School Jackets, tried to romp them and all that. But he went on to say, it doesn't take, a smart man to know that, hey, I got something right here.
Yeah, he's coach downplaying his team. All coaches do.
Yeah,
I mean that's going to happen. And but now either you downplay your team or you're giving false information, or when you win, beat somebody bad, they say you ain't playing nobody.
Yep.
So which is it? But anyway, Springfield is still undefeated in 1943, and we're fixing to start the first meeting between Springfield and NBA in a long-standing rivalry. In fact, but let's give NBA credit for where it's due. This is the only team of all the longtime rivals that had a winning record against Boy Smith.
Oh, wow.
Well, a private school.
Yeah.
And and it was a respected rivalry. Springfield and NBA goes back, way back. And the last time we played NBA, I think, was sometime in the in the 70s. I think that was the last time. No, we actually played NBA in the 80s. Coach Pearson played them. But it goes back a long way. Anyway, this is the first year that the Big Red and the Jackets play. And the NBA's got a good ball club. But guess what? Springfield rode to a 33-7 win at the Big Red Field, Andrews Field. NBA scored first, but after that it was all Springfield. James Nixon, Bubba Wallen, and Sam Pickering accounted for 247 yards rushing for the Jackets, now touted as a state title contender after the NBA win. Of course, mythical state titles back then, and for some reason we didn't get it at the end of the year, but we'll talk about that later on. Anyway, up next for the Jackets was Goodlettsville, and the Jackets played the Trojans, who were once beaten. They had a good ball club that year, but still the Jackets were way too much for Goodlettsville, as the Jackets defeated Goodlettsville 34-0. Standout players for the Jackets were Mac O'Brien, Ray Dodd, Otis Swallows, Paul Mitchell, and Albert Matthews all had a great game against Goodlettsville. Up next for the Jackets, let's close out the year in the regular season, and it's Clarksville. And there's a little crowd there of around 4,000. As Springfield defeated Clarksville 44-0 to close out the regular season undefeated. Springfield had 603 yards in the ball game.
Jesus.
Bubba Wallen passed 8 times, completing 4 of his touchdowns, as Springfield rolled over Clarksville 44-0. That didn't happen much in that old rivalry, but the Jackets rolled against the Wildcats 44-0. Up next would be a mid-state championship game scheduled to play Tullahoma at Vanderbilt Stadium.
I misquoted in 42. The Jackets gave up 38 points on that season. Which is still
ain't much of a misquote. You could have got by with that one. I don't think nobody would have said it.
Which still is people scoring that in one game nowadays.
I heard that.
But in 43, the Jackets gave up 20 points, and it's unbelievable with this schedule. You're looking at DuPont, West, Hillsboro, Father Ryan, Isaac Lytton, TIS, Portland, NBA, Goodlettsville, Clarksville, like you finna speak on at Tullahoma, mid-state championship game.
And we're talking about 20 points all year. Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Anyway, Springfield, there was a game set up in 1943 to play 2 of the mid-state's best teams. I think Tullahoma was unbeaten. And they were to play the Jackets in a bowl game or mid-state championship game at Vanderbilt Stadium. Springfield jumped out to 2 TDs in the second quarter after 2 Tullahoma turnovers. James Nixon scored the first Springfield touchdown on a 23-yard run. And Nixon scored again on a 17-yard run on the first play of the fourth quarter. Bubba Wallen passed 23 yards to Ray Dodd for the touchdown to close out the scoring for Springfield. The top 2 backs for Tullahoma was Red Arnold, and somebody Springfield folks will know, Blue House. Mr. House was a former assistant for Coach Smith and teacher at Springfield High School, who was also the former superintendent for Robertson County Schools in the 70s. And he played for Tullahoma in the 1943 championship. What's interesting about this game, I remember reading somewhere in my notes about the Tullahoma coach. He was not declaring himself a champs, but wanting to play, but Springfield held their own and won it 21-0 to remain unbeaten. 10-0-1, mythical state championship. This team, I don't know who actually got it in 1943, but I guarantee whoever it was,
how aren't
they didn't play the schedule as the Jackets.
Yeah, how aren't the Jackets 1943 state champs?
What's that now?
How aren't they the state champs? How's that not like?
It's I don't know. You tell me. That's just popularity. It's a bunch of writers voting on championships. But I guarantee you, I know Oak Ridge, Chattanooga Central, places like that, Kingsport, all had great teams and might have won state championships on the grounds of being undefeated. I guarantee you, though, they didn't play the teams that Coach Smith played, who was playing large schools. We were a small school playing the second largest city in the state schools and the whole public school system in Nashville at that time.
Here we go. Speaking of the 43 team, like Chris just said, 10-0-1. This is from the Nashville Banner. The writer Bob Rule. In the past 8 years, this person has been in Middle Tennessee. The 1943 Springfield Yellow Jackets now stand as the finest high school 11 seen during that period. That's high school, not preps. Some of Howard Allen's great teams a few years ago at NBA perhaps were stronger, and Castle Heights this year might be superior. The Jackets aren't particularly big, but they'll knock your trousers right off. If you want to run, they'll run better than you will. If you like to throw the ball, then Bubba Walling can deposit the ball in a knot hole for you at 30 paces. Springfield's offense never changes. It's old-fashioned as a hoop skirt and as deadly as a garnet rifle. You always know what to expect of the Jackets, but you also know what to expect when a man points a gun at you and tells you he's going to shoot. But you can't just duck when he pulls the trigger. Springfield will always be remembered as the football team with a passing attack that was seldom used. Actually, Bubba Walling is a brilliant passer, and Ray Dodd is a far better than average pass receiver. Had it been necessary, the Jackets could have thrown the ball all over the place with sensational success. But there's no use trying to jump over a river when you can walk comfortably across the bridge. It can be told now that Billy Stevens is the young man who run the ball club. Boy Smith never tells the public who calls the signals, but Stevens did this year. And Smith himself says it's just like being out there calling his plays yourself. Billy runs the ball club just like I'd run it if I were the quarterback. As usual, Springfield's line doesn't get the credit it deserves. The public never sees as much of the linemen as they should, but that's the way football is. Mac O'Brien is as good a tackle as any in Tennessee, and the two ends, Ray Dodd and Billie Jean Holman, are far above average. Secrets to Jackets blocking? There is none, says Billy Stevens. By Edgar Allan, Tennessean. Fans who have watched the Springfield Yellow Jackets ride through some 3 straight opponents without a defeat naturally come to the conclusion that all the squad must do is practice blocking. This writer went up and watched the Jackets drill, and after practice, concerned Captain Billy Stevens, 18-year-old senior blocking back, and what is the deep, dark secret behind the deadly, devastating Springfield blocking. Guess again, fans, because there isn't any secret. Stevens' first words. After the season starts, we don't spend a minute on blocking. Why, Coach doesn't even scrimmage us, and we hardly ever have any contact work at all. As for the blocking, a word with Boy Smith is even more surprising. This is Coach Smith right here. Most of the spring vacation is spent on fundamentals. So during the actual season, we never scrimmage, and only contact work is done with players walking through the motions, he continued. I wasted 6 or 7 years teaching them fancy shoulder blocks, body blocks, arm and leg blocks, and I've never seen one executed well on the field.
They're probably all outlawed nowadays, too.
Stevens went on to say, if there is a secret to our blocking, I think it's the fact that very few of our players ever miss their assignments. Stevens will play football for the University of Tennessee next year. It was learned today. He is ineligible for armed services because of a punctured eardrum. Mac O'Brien was also offered a scholarship with UT, but opted to go into service. Coach Smith says of his 1943 team, I can't say this is the best team I've ever coached, but I will say that no team I have coached could beat them. Buford Baby Ray of the Green Bay Packers said this of the team. It is the best coached team I've seen all year. That fellow Smith must be a miracle man at teaching blocking. He's so all right up there with the big boys. Like you said, 1943 All-State High School football team. Bubba Wallen made the first team at quarterback, while Mac O'Brien was on the first team at tackle. Billy Stevens was on the second All-State team at halfback, and Sam Pickerton was on the third team at fullback. Otis Swallows and Paul Mitchell were honorable mention. Also James Nixon. 1943 Jackets, 10-0-1.
10-0-1, mid-state champs, as you read out the all-state honors and so forth off that team. Something else I want to mention when you're talking about, you mentioning that, you're talking about some of them went into the military. During this time, World War II.
Yep.
You can't think
exactly what's going on.
And people or kids are going into the service rather than going to school and so forth. And it was a trying time in our country. And I guess it was a diversion to watch football, instead of all the bad times, which I like sports now instead of all the bad times we're going through nowadays.
And I think it's also interesting. You mentioned that a player on this team, right here on this 43 team, has a great grandson, Springfield High School starting middle linebacker Hayden Reynolds.
Hayden Reynolds, and that's Mr. Billie Jean Holman's great grandson, and that's Holman Jewelers.
Our first down sponsor.
Yeah, there you
Holman Jewelers first down.
There you go. You asked if he was kin to Brian. That's his daddy.
That's crazy. That's the connections we're starting to develop here as we get on in this great Springfield football tradition.
And this is what's good about doing this. I hope people enjoy it. If you hear your names of your relatives, we might mess up every now and then, and we might not mention somebody. We're just going by what we
see,
have.
yeah.
And once again, Dr. Trauber doing this history of Springfield football in the Robertson County Times over the years. I saved it, and Terrence and I are getting notes from it and reading from it, and it's awesome. It's something that needed to be told.
And I'm glad
it's being told.
It
just
is.
Like the book that was written for Coach Smith, that needed to be done, and it's about time.
If you haven't got that book, you should definitely get that book on Coach Boyd Smith. I think it's available on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, you can. I got it the first time I found out it was on Amazon a couple years ago.
Yep.
It's sitting right here beside me.
This is great stuff, man. And as we end up the 1943 season, as we said, the Jackets 10-0-1 and rolling along.
Moving right along, we move on to the 1944 season, which turned out to be a good year, 8-3 for the Jackets.
You gotta lose sometime, don't you?
Gotta lose sometime. That last little streak was pretty impressive, and it's really really impressive as you're sitting here thinking about what they done. Anyway, in 1944, the Jackets opened the season at DuPont, and the Jackets won 25-7. And Springfield scored first when Jewel Risher passed 15 yards to Ray Dodd for the touchdown. Risher also threw another TD to Otis Swallows. Later on in the game, Howard Randolph scored on a 3-yard run for Springfield. Randolph then passed to Ray Dodd for a 20-yard touchdown to close out the Springfield scoring. Randolph. I do know Randolph. That's my dad.
You know that? You know that guy?
I know him, but he's also a lot of people, many generations bus driver.
Yeah.
And some good, fine Yellow Jacket football players. I remember Mike Thomas rode my dad's bus back in the day. And
that's dope. That's very.
Anyway, I don't want
to think
I'm being biased here, but he had a good game.
That's nice that he would finally, your dad's in it. That's just beautiful.
It's all right. I mean, I never really, as a kid, didn't know what he done, and when all this came out, you found out.
Yep.
And he had a good game but he was one of many Jackets that were successful through the years.
And as I'm looking at this team picture, these teams are getting bigger. The numbers are growing. We was talking back in the 20s. He had 12 guys out, 15 guys. Now you're sitting there looking at 20, 30 guys on his pictures, and these teams are growing. Numbers are growing.
And they grow even more as the years go along. It's kind of interesting to see that the numbers are picking up. The Jackets in 43. This is the first loss. Where would he go? Maybe 3 years. West upset Springfield 21-6. The Blue Jays jumped out to a 21-0 lead as Springfield scored its only TD on a Jewel Risher 25-yard pass to Howard Randolph. West, as we said, defeated the Jackets 21-6, and I think maybe that's the first loss since 41. And we'd have to go back and look. 43, 40. It was a while. It was a while. 41 maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first loss since last time they lost, the Jackets lost was, well, heck, might be 40.
First loss since 40.
I gotta go back to 40 and see.
That's a pretty good streak.
Yeah, first loss since 1940. They lost in 1940. The last game, no? Jesus. That's the first loss since midway through the season in 1940 when he lost to Quashville.
Wow.
Since then, they haven't lost. 41, unbeaten. 42, unbeaten. 43, unbeaten. And now here at 44 and
first loss in
quite a while.
And we wonder why Springfield is known to be a football town.
Yes.
You don't see signs around Springfield proclaiming that, but we lived that.
We live. It's the thing, and that's the thing. You go to certain places, you may see murals of football players, and you'll see different things up about football. And in Springfield, that's not a thing. You come to Springfield, it's football. It's literally Springfield football. The Springfield Yellow Jackets. And it's not a secret. Everybody knows it, and Springfield football has been so established for so long that it may shock people, but Springfield football is kind of known nationally.
Right, it's a brand.
It is,
as Coach Wilson likes to call it. It's a brand. There you go. Anyway, after that loss, we go on to play Hillsboro, and guess what? We get another loss. But, we're going to tell the good with the bad. We're going to have bad years in here, and yes, we had bad years, real bad years over the years. But anyway, that was our second loss, and the Jackets lost to the Burros of Hillsboro in a 6-0 loss. Jackie Seeley scored on a 48-yard run for the Burros of Hillsboro and held on for the win. They made it stand 6-0 over Springfield. Anyway, we move right along. Springfield plays Father Ryan the following week, and Jewel Risher scored on a 6-yard run as Springfield held on to defeat Father Ryan 7-0. Moving right along, next up, Isaac Litton. The Litton Lions, as Jewel Risher scored on a 4-yard run for Springfield as the Jackets held on for the win versus Litton 7-0. Jacket in Otis Swallows, great player, was credited for a great game on defense and offense. He's a big lineman, tight end on defense, tight end on offense, and he was a defensive end also. Great ball player, Otis Swallows. Next up for the Jackets was TIS, Tennessee Industrial School, and Springfield defeated TIS 30-0. Howard Randolph scored on the first touchdown for Springfield on a 1-yard run. Jewel Risher passed 25 yards to Ray Dodd for a Jacket score. the Jackets threw 4 passes the entire game. You know what's interesting?
What's that?
3 of them were for touchdowns.
When they did pass it, it was yes.
Even Coach Thomas would like that. He never liked to throw it. 3 of 4, 3 touchdowns. How about that? Joe Nixon was outstanding for the Jackets on defense. Another great ball player back then. Moving right along, 1944 season continued. Jackets defeated Portland 49-0. Jewel Risher scored 5 TDs to lead Springfield to a 49-0 win. Next ball game, Jackets play NBA. Another loss for them, but NBA is very tough. The Jackets lost to the Big Red 45-20. Springfield scored twice on passes from Jewel Risher to Ray Dodd, and Risher ran for a final TD in the 45-20 loss to the Big Red of NBA. Up next for the Jackets was Goodlettsville, and the Jackets come out a winner 47-7. Tom Roberts had an outstanding game as Springfield beat the Trojans in that one. Up next for the Jackets, Gallatin. We defeat Gallatin 34-7. Jewel Risher threw to Ray Dodd for a 49-yard touchdown in the ball game, and it happened again as Risher threw 33 yards to Ray Dodd for another score to make it a 13-6 lead at the half. Howard Randolph and Jewel Risher added 2 TDs on short runs against the Wave as the Jackets rolled 34-7.
I'm sitting here looking at a picture, and as I'm speaking about it right now, you'll see it on your screen. And it says, it was in the spring of 1942 that these young men posed for the above photo. Charles Nixon was their head coach, and he had the responsibility to prepare them for the future varsity play. And it's all these guys are speaking of now. And I think it's pretty cool.
You're looking at, I see my dad, the first one in the bottom row, looking like my nephew.
I think it's pretty cool that, you know, one of the great senior players was coaching the young guys up so they can be prepared when their time was due. I think that was
tradition.
Beautiful. Yes, that's
and he
nice.
Was coaching his cousin on that team, the James Nixon, who was a great running back, who had the great big game in 43. And that's that picture that you've shown before where he's got the leather helmet on, and that's him running. James, that's his cousin. And Charles Nixon was a great ball player, of course, for the Jackets. And his brother is in that picture also, Joe Nixon, who played for the Jackets. On this ball club,
on the 44 team. It's just it's great. It's greatness. I love it.
It's called tradition, man, and it goes deep. Up next, we're at I guess the Clarksville game, right? Is that where we're at now? Yeah. And the Jackets defeated the Wildcats 25-13. And Clarksville was without the services of Frank Rule and Jake Rudolph, who fell to Springfield. Jake Rudolph being the brother of Mason Rudolph, the golfer. Jake Rudolph being the coach at Memphis University School, who went on to win state championships at Memphis University School. Great player at Clarksville. They didn't have him, but the Jackets went on to defeat Clarksville in the ball game. We scored late in the first quarter on a Risher run, and in the second on a pass from Risher to Ray Dodd. Risher and Dodd done it again as the Jackets closed out 1944, 8-3. At the end of the season of 1944, Otis Swallows was named to the All-State First Team, and also Ray Dodd was named to the All-State Second Team in 1944 8-3 record. That's good. No matter,
Yeah.
I'll take an 8-3 this
Yep.
coming year.
Especially with that schedule.
Right.
And the thing is, I know they were, they put in the paper that Clarksville was without their two guys, but Clarksville hasn't beaten Springfield since those guys were in middle school. So take it as you may.
They didn't call it middle school.
Juniors, they was in junior high.
How about
Yeah,
that?
since they were in junior high, take it as you may.
Yeah. Oh boy. How about that?
And look at this. What's this game we're watching right now on the screen?
That is Isaac Litton, and they're playing Springfield, and that's at Isaac Litton. That's strange. It showed the scoreboard. They're closing it out right now. We've got
got cheerleaders jumping on players.
We do these this reports, and I throw in this old DVD. It's got a lot of old games, and that was Isaac Litton. Never
what year
got
was
to
that?
go to a game there, but
what year was that?
That was
63?
in 1963.
That stadium was beautiful. That scoreboard had a lightning, like they had it like.
Their seating was like split, and they had writing on a big wall on the school. I remember their stadium out there. It was a unique place.
It's
nice. Just like Boy Smith. It had the old metal wooden bleachers like that, and it seated a lot of people.
And I seen we just seen that they had bleachers in the end zone, and with the big old scoreboard in the end zone. Of course, the scoreboard has a actual clock on it with hands.
And the goalposts had crepe paper on it.
Sure did. They had crepe paper on theirs too. But that stadium was nice, and the lighting was nice, and it was beautiful. It was like a straight. It was an event. You could tell it was an event.
Well, football back then there wasn't malls to go to. There wasn't movies. There weren't cable TV. You went to the football game on Friday.
And now you hear. They're at Boy Smith Field. You can tell that just as soon as it comes on, and
Boy Smith Field there,
and you can see that crowd on the visitor side was very, very packed.
A lot of folks at ball games back in that time,
and even the pictures I'm looking at now, we're finna be in 1945. We just finished 44, and even on these games we're watching in 63, you know what I've noticed? I've yet to see a single-digit player.
That's true. They didn't have that then. I don't know if it's against the rules, but you'll see a running back with 77.
Yeah, I've yet to see. Like you said,
I don't know what the rules were at that time.
The cornerback down here in the bottom of the screen, number 56.
Yeah,
like I've yet to see. Like I'm saying, I'm looking at the 45 team picture now, and I'm looking at the 63 game. I've yet to see a player with a single digit.
Well, this is their double digit. The quarterback is 10 for the opposing team here. I didn't catch who we were playing here. I think it's BGA maybe. Their quarterback actually does have a 10, which is rare. We at Springfield, we had very high numbers at quarterback. Coach just probably didn't have the jerseys or play what jerseys he had, but.
And another thing, look at that sideline over there, and all the players are sitting down.
Yeah.
And everybody has their helmet in between their legs.
That's true. Funny story. My dad, when he was a sophomore, I'll tell it. When he was a sophomore, he didn't play much, and he was on the bench, and they were sitting down.
Yeah.
And he said, Coach Smith said, warm up to go in the game. Back then, you would run back and forth to get ready to go in. He said, Coach must have forgot about him and forgotten. He said, I about wore myself out just running back and forth. So he said, I didn't know. I thought he was going to put me in the game, but Coach forgot about him, and he was over there with his tongue hanging out.
Running back and forth like a dog.
Yeah, he said, he must have forgotten me and finally sat down. I told that story. He used to tell me that often.
I think I've never seen, it's literally every player's on that bench, shoulder to shoulder, helmet between their legs. And like you said, they're waiting for Coach to call them up and say, hey, get warmed up, and they'll run back in and get in, because back in these days, you're 11 is you're 11. Those guys stay on the field. They don't come off the field.
Right.
I think this is
nowadays, everybody stands on the sideline.
You got personnel. You running people in and
sit
out.
down if you're hurt. I
guess. Hey, I should ask Coach Wilson, we should put a wooden bench down and let people sit. See what he thinks about that one.
I don't think you'd go for it. We're looking at this old film. Look at that crepe paper against that wall, and the bleachers are against the wall in the end zone down there.
Oh, they're standing though, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think the seats may be
A lot
removed.
of people are standing behind the fence. They might not have put the bleachers up on at that. They're shaped out, but they might not be on that. We're getting people confused. We're doing a telecast of the game.
We're watching and just like right now, they all sitting down in the bleachers back there.
Yeah, there is. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 bleachers in the end zone, maybe 5 high, something like that.
Same end zone.
I remember when they were there. I remember walking in the aisle to the other side.
Wow. Yeah, because they're elevated. I never knew that. It's elevated. That's neat. So I was thinking they were standing
on the ground,
on the fence where everybody used to stand. No, they're standing elevated right there.
Oh, that's an aisle. See the aisle? Yeah, they're standing on that aisle.
Sure is.
There's a 63 Chevy. Here we go. We're doing a car show now. All right. Here we go. 1945, moving right along as we roll on. In 1945, the Jackets finished 6-1-2. Another decent record there. They started off the season and they avenged a loss they had the previous year as they beat Nashville West 13-0 on their newly lighted stadium. So Nashville West is just getting a new stadium with lights in 1945. We beat them to it. You know, West Nashville's Bill Meade, all that area where all the money's at. Anyway, the Jackets beat West by a score 13-0. Tom Roberts scored the TDs for the Springfield win as the Jackets start off the season 1-0. Up next, Bryant Fuquay had a 77-yard kickoff return to the 2-yard line where Tom Roberts took it over from there and scored. And then Tom Roberts then passed 20 yards to Howard Randolph for another touchdown. Randolph scored again on a 25-yard run, and Vernon Atchley scored the final touchdown for Springfield on a 5-yard run. That's the first time I mentioned him. He's a stellar player down the line, and his brother was really a good player for the Jackets as we follow the history here into the 50s. Anyway, the Jackets go to Father Ryan next, and it's a 7-7 tie. Vernon Atchley scored the first touchdown for the Jackets on a 13-yard run to give Springfield a 7-0 lead. Howard Randolph and Horace Murphy had 2 interceptions late to stop Ryan's scoring drives. Of course, Mr. Murphy, longtime Jackets supporter all those years, and a player in 1945. Joe Nixon and Cecil Chance were outstanding in the Springfield line for the night in the 7-7 tie with Father Ryan, which I think defeated the Jackets the year prior. Or, no, they didn't. I don't think they did. I'm going to quit jumping to what I said. Anyway, up next, Isaac Litton.
Father Ryan and Springfield tied 0-0 in 44.
All right. I knew it was something, you know. So it was another tie. It's 2 ties in a row against Father Ryan. Up next is Isaac Litton. And in a pouring rain, Springfield defeated Isaac Litton 14-0. Tom Roberts scored the first Springfield touchdown on a short run, and a big old run by big Vernon Atchley scored a touchdown before the half ended, and the Jackets made it stand for a 14-0 win over Litton. Up next was TIS, and they shocked Springfield in a 6-6 tie. A tie is not a loss, but it was apparently shocking as TIS tied the heavily favored Springfield Yellow Jackets in a 6-6 tie. Vernon Atchley, who was injured against Isaac Litton, was replaced by Donald Sonny Gray, who had a touchdown pass to William McPherson to get the Springfield score. And I read that slow when I said Donald Sonny Gray. Yes, that is Sonny Gray of the St. Louis Cardinals, pitcher's grandfather.
Oh, wow.
How about that? How cool is that?
Springfield connections.
Right. That's son, and that's Jesse's son who played in the 80s for the Jackets. And that Donald Sonny Gray was a great football player also. And we'll be reading more about him. He played with my dad back in the day then. And also, for years, I remember him fixing shoes at Binkley Shoe Store. He was what you call a shoe cobbler. Yeah. How cool was that? Anyway, I remember him too. He died unexpectedly in the 70s of a heart attack. He was a heck of an athlete. Also, brother to announcer Bill Gray, Radio Bill Gray. People remember them. Remember him. And also, I think his grandson does the PA at the Jackets. Who does the PA? Is it Hollingsworth?
Yep.
That's Bill Gray was his grandfather.
Wow.
So he's kin to the Sonny Gray also. The original Sonny Gray. Let's put it.
The original Sonny Gray.
It was his nickname, I think.
Yeah.
And Sonny Gray, the pitcher now, they actually named him that, I think. I think it's his real name. Of course, he was at Vanderbilt, and he's a major league pitcher. Throwing for a lot of bucks nowadays.
Yeah, how kind of like that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
And as even now, Chris Hollingsworth, he's in the press box. We call him, voice of the Jackets. And his son, he has a son playing football now. He's on the Springfield High School team.
Generations.
So it's generations, man. It's
generations. And in the 50s, his grandfather is going to be mentioned for the team here. Anyway, Springfield went to Portland next in 1945, and Springfield scored twice in the first, and once in the second, and twice in the second, as Springfield rode to a 33-0 win over the Portland Purple Panthers. Up next for the Jackets in 1945, MBA. And Springfield defeated MBA in this one after the loss the previous year. Springfield defeated MBA 15-6. Springfield playing perhaps their best game, defeated MBA 15-6 in front of a packed crowd of 4,500, led by the terrific punting of Tom Roberts and the running of Roberts, Howard Randolph, and Vernon Ashley. The Jackets held on for the win. Roberts punted a 54-yard punt in the ball game and stopped MBA at the 4-yard line as the swarming Jacket defense smothered Billy Joe Earhart in the end zone for a safety. Tom Roberts scored on a 9-play drive, and Horace Murphy recovered an MBA fumble that led to a Vernon Ashley touchdown and conversion. In the second half, Roberts had punts of 46, 54, 38, 34, 36, 45 to keep MBA at bay. Springfield were led on defense by Joe Nixon, Vernon Ashley, Don Wilson, and Horace Murphy. MBA led in the stats game, but the Jackets led in the ultimate stat game with the win. They had 11-8 first downs, and they also led in the yardage, 175-25. But like we said, Springfield won the ball game 15-6 to remain unbeaten in 1945. Up next for the Jackets was DuPont in 1945, and the Jackets defeated the Bulldogs 25-0. Springfield scored first as Vernon Ashley crossed pay dirt in the first half for a 7-0 halftime lead. Tom Roberts had 2 TDs in the second half. The last Springfield touchdown came on a 20-yard Sonny Gray pass to William McPherson, another generational player, as Springfield beat DuPont 25-0 and remain unbeaten heading into the season final against Clarksville. So the Jackets have 2 ties and they're undefeated as they head into the Clarksville game. Remember this one. My dad talked about it. Clarksville, they got us 33-13 in the final ball game. It was really a heartbreaking game for the Jackets, who were undefeated at the time. And this is one of the few Clarksville teams. I don't know how many they had undefeated regular season, but I think this is one of the first. They finished 10-0 after they defeated Springfield 33-13, giving the Jackets only loss in 1945 to finish 6-1-2. Springfield scored first on a Vernon Ashley run, and then Clarksville took the lead on a Creason Briggs run. And Creason Briggs was a big, bad running back. My dad told me that, and he said the previous year he was sure great. He went out with an injury the previous year, and he said he was sure glad Creason Briggs wasn't playing. He said, I hated having to hit that big man. But anyway, the following year, he must not have hit him too much in this one. His Clarksville Road, 33-13. Frank Rubel and Jake Rudolph also was big for the Wildcats. And the final 22 points for Clarksville as they finished 10-0 for the first time. Vernon Ashley and Joe Nixon made second team All-State. And Joe Nixon, a junior, made All-State team. So how about that? They had some awards. It was a disappointing loss at the end of the year. Nothing to shake your head at, though. 6-1-2 for the Jackets, losing the final ball game of 1945 against Clarksville.
And they, I know, article right here, Jackets avenged many failures in 1945 season. Because, you thinking back to, 1944, the Jackets lost 3 ball games as they try to, rebuild this roster again. Coach Smith did that a few times there. And while maintaining undefeated seasons. When 44, they finally, they gave up a few games. With a young roster, now in 45, those guys were, destined to bring it back. They didn't like losing too much. And that losing that last game of Clarksville and, going out on a whim like that, I know that was tough. But I know the guys, licked their wounds and got ready for that 46 season.
Oh, yeah. And we'll move right along to 46. The Jackets finished 7-2-1, another winning season. Wasn't many after that. We're pretty much done with the unbeaten years now.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a lot of 1-2 loss years. But like we said, I think we had Coach Smith had maybe 5 losing seasons. Yeah. Not even that many in 43 years.
If you think, and with this roster he's building every year. I mean, the schedule he's building every year. It's tough. Tougher. It's tough to stay.
Nobody wants to play you. That's the case nowadays.
And I got an article here from the Nashville Banner, August 16th, 1946. As we're getting ready to head into the 46th season, Coach Boyd Smith was the proud recipient of a new 1946 Plymouth.
How about that?
At a surprise testimonial dinner given at the Colonial Hotel. Am I saying that right?
Colonial
Hotel.
I wouldn't have known, but my mama told me about it. It was
surprise.
A good place to eat. It used to be where now it's the it might be the ag office right on the corner of Fifth.
Okay, so it was a bank at one time, right?
First National Bank.
Wow, it was a hotel.
There was a hotel there. There's an old picture on.
I got pictures.
You grew up in Springfield. Of it sitting out front, and there's a Model T in the front.
Wow,
that's cool.
So
a lot of history. That's where they had their banquets.
They had a lot of things there, and I know I have a picture of one of those banquets. I don't know which year it is, but we'll get to it on there. And,
all right.
Coach Boyd Smith was the proud recipient of a new 1946 Plymouth at a surprise testimonial dinner given at the
Colonial
Hotel. Colonial Hotel last night by local citizens. Smith, who will start his 19th year at the helm of the Yellow Jackets when his 11th takes the field against Nashville West High September 13th.
Still calling them 11s instead of teams. It's funny how the writers done that back in the day. They wanted people to know how many players are in the game.
Smith was taken completely by surprise at the presentation. He had attended the dinner under the impression that it was a customary preseason grid rally, but was nearly overcome with surprise when presented by the automobile by Harry Beanie Elam. Since coming to Springfield in 1928 from Ripley, Mississippi, Smith has built the Jackets into a perennial state grid contender. In 1940, a new field and stadium was erected on the school campus and dedicated Boyd Smith Field. Coach Boyd Smith and 34 boys are to leave for camp next Tuesday. Coach Smith and some 34 boys and a number of college boys who were stars on the Jackets squad of recent years will leave Tuesday afternoon for a 2-week camp at Montgomery Bell State Park near Dixon. It was announced yesterday. The group plans to go by bus, although there will be a truck to carry ample food supply from Springfield to vigorous appetites. 2 cooks will be taken from Springfield. Vernon Atchley, star fullback on the 1945 squad, will be among those attending the camp. He was painfully injured while riding his motorcycle on the Nashville-Gallatin Highway last Sunday afternoon. So they're going to camp in Dixon.
Yeah, and that Montgomery Bell State Park's still there.
Between Dixon
it had to be just the first years it opened. It hadn't. At that time, it's kind of strange, but going to camp, that was a thing. A lot of teams still do that. Earlier, when we done this history, remember we were talking about the camp on the Red River.
Yeah, you took them to Red River.
Down in Dot.
Yeah.
I know where Dot, Kentucky's at. That's where they were. They must have had a camp on the creek bank down there where it's cool. They could go swimming.
Yeah, swimming after practice.
Yeah.
Probably had them in the water doing drills, coach. And now you fast forward in 46, he's still taking his team to camp, but now he's so established that, he's bringing 2 chefs with him and a truck full of food. And he has old players who are in college now coming to camp. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we're moving as we move on in the 40s to 46. Right along, we closing out the decade of the 40s, 1946. The Jackets finished with a 7-2-1 record. They open up with West Nashville, and the ball game ends in a 6-6 tie. West High scored first on a Billy Lawrence run. Springfield countered with a 55-yard pass from Milburn DeCourcy to William McPherson to tie it up. The conversion failed, and that's how it ended. 6-6 before 5,000 fans at Springfield in a 6-6 tie. Up next for the Jackets, Hillsboro, and the Jackets rolled 40-0. I think this is the first matchup between Springfield and Hillsboro that we've done. Scoring every quarter, Springfield beat Hillsboro 40-0. John Cron, who there's a Hall of Famer right there. Yeah. John Cron passed to William McPherson for the first Jacket TD. That's the first TD that he's involved with since this. As we move along, there'll be a whole lot of John Cron.
Yeah, he's another superstar.
Yeah, absolutely. He passed to William McPherson for the first Jacket score, and later on in the ball game, Cron scored on a 38-yard run, and Vernon actually also had a touchdown. He's back from the injury on the motorcycle. And Jim Coleman had 2 TDs for Springfield, one for 16 and one for 22 yards. Up next for the Jackets, they go to Portland, take on Portland. and it was kind of a close game, 70-0. Springfield, 70-0. And William McPherson had 5 TDs from his end position. Milburn DeCourcy and John Coleman had 3 TDs each, also, as the Jackets rode 70-0 over Portland. Up next for the Jackets was TIS, and TIS going into this ball game was undefeated. But when they left it, Springfield defeated TIS 13-6. William McPherson took a pass from John Cron and rambled 90 yards for the first Springfield score. And Big Vernon Ashley scored the other Jacket touchdown in the 13-6 win over TIS. Up next is Isaac Litton. Springfield defeated Isaac Litton 27-0. Milburn DeCourcy had 2 touchdowns for Springfield, and Bryant Fuquay and John Cron had 1 TD apiece as the Jackets defeated Isaac Litton 27-0. Moving right along in 1946, up comes NBA. Big ball game. Jackets were defeated by the Big Red 25-20 before more than 5,000 fans at Frank Andrews Field at NBA, as NBA gave Springfield its first loss of 1946. NBA, led by Bill Wade, if that sounds familiar, NFL, look it up. Bill Wade, Jack Sparks, and Jack Whitaker and George Cole to defeat Springfield 25-20. The Jackets were led by Vernon Ashley, Bryant Fuquay, William McPherson, Rudy Miller, and Joe Nixon had good ball games for the Jackets as they fell to 5-1. I mentioned Bill Wade. Bill Wade went on to play at Vanderbilt, and he was a longtime NFL player. He played for the Chicago Bears in 1963, leading them to the NFL championship.
Oh, wow.
That's 1946. And he was pretty young right there. I know my dad played against him. He might have been an 8th grader.
Wow.
He said, I didn't like it. He'd come up and tackle you and grab you by the arms and swing you around. Up next for the Jackets, they go to Goodlettsville and take it out on the Trojans after their loss to NBA. Jackets win 67-0. Vernon Ashley, William McPherson, and Milburn DeCourcy all had 2 touchdowns each as Springfield rode 67-0 over Goodlettsville. Up next, DuPont. Jackets defeat DuPont 13-7. John Cron passed to William McPherson for the first TD. And then we had a Milburn DeCourcy, Willis Coleman, and a 65-yard run by Cron for the other scoring for the Jackets, as they defeat DuPont 13-7. Up next for the Jackets, Clarksville. In the final ball game of 1946, it ends in a 6-6 tie. It says, listen to this, 8,500 fans at Clarksville's Municipal Stadium. That's the first year that they played at Municipal Stadium. I think it was completed at that time, which Clarksville actually used to play at their high school, but then they started playing at Austin Peay, which they did up until they got their own field at their present school. They played at Austin Peay back when your dad played. And, but anyway, this was at Municipal Stadium, and it was over 8,500 at that ball game, and it ended in a 6-6 tie. Springfield scored on its opening possession and scored on a power run by Vernon Ashley to go up 6-0 over the previously unbeaten and untied. We rooted for them. How about that? It's like winning. How about that? So this would have been their second, only in history, second undefeated team in the regular season prior to this last season, which technically wasn't undefeated since they lost their last game.
Yeah.
Anyway, I won't get into that. Anyway, it was they were previously undefeated and tied, and Clarksville that ruined their season. Clarksville got to the Springfield 2-yard line late in the ball game, but Springfield held. It said John Cron swatted down a Clarksville pass to preserve the tie, or Clarksville would have won the ball game. J.B. Porter had a great day of punting for Springfield, keeping Clarksville at bay to close out the 1946 season 7-2-1.
And I'm sitting here looking, and of course, these notes and stuff we're looking at is from Mr. Dr. Traver. And I'm gonna take you back a little bit. We just, Chris just finished up the 46th season. The Jackets going 7-2-1. In the paper here that Dr. Traver has, he got something from 1937 here. Of course, Red O'Donnell. I'm just as
sports writer.
Yeah, I'm just as common with him from the banner as I'm pretty sure Coach Smith was at this point. This is something he's saying. I think it's pretty funny because Springfield football. We talked about it. The tradition of it, and even in 37, just as now, if you were to say something bad about a Springfield High School football player on Facebook, say today, the whole community would be on your head. And it's so funny right here in 1937 to read to you. The same thing was then. The Springfield community stuck together, and they backed their Jackets no matter what. Red O'Donnell read in the Nashville Banner in 1937. Dear readers, yours truly, who saw Springfield take Clarksville yesterday afternoon 20-0, has been asked how Springfield compares with teams in Nashville. Personally, NBA, Central, or East could beat Coach Smith's well-coached little aggression. So, this is before Coach Smith ended up putting those people on the schedule, and, 4 or 5 years later, he put them on the schedule and he was running through them.
Yeah, and he's now eating his words.
Yes, now he's eating his words in 1946. He's been eating them because the Jackets had 3 undefeated seasons with those people on the schedule. But
he was a big sports writer for the Banner and later on columnist over there, and he's eating his words.
Yeah, and
he's one of the guys that originally said y'all need to play tougher teams, and we'll give you more recognition.
Yeah, and then it says, other than this trio, however, I frankly and impartially believe that Springfield could whip any other team in Nashville. I expect to be criticized in Springfield for my estimate of the Springfield team. To my friends in that section, I advise, remember me? I'm the guy who picked the Giants to beat the Yankees. Litton to prevail in this game with Springfield. They said, note, he missed both those picks. Also, I guessed at 12 games last week and missed 9. So you see, I may be all wet in my judgment, and perhaps I overlooked the thought that good things come in small packages. And if I did, you all have to bring suit my Springfield and it's ripped off here. And it says by Earl Swan and Mr. Rudolph. But then here, right literally a week later, this is what he writes. The Red O'Donnell. Since my appraisal appeared in Friday's newspaper, I have been delegated with letters and phone calls from constituents of the Springfield 11, most of which upbraid me for my stand. I hereby go on record as admitting that nowhere in the grid world has any aggression as many Rapid fans. He then says, in a desperate attempt to gain a meager measure of revenge, I strike back and go on record as naming 5 other 11s that could defeat Springfield. They are Pitt, California, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Minnesota. So He's
He
starting
give
to,
us some credit there, didn't
he's starting to pick at the Jackets and say, okay, I'll tell you some more teams that can beat you. He named, of course, college powerhouses at that point. But I think it's funny that even then, Springfield stuck with each other.
Oh yeah, they were taking up for their kids, the Jackets. That's for sure. We're moving on. Are we moving on now? Yeah, it's 40. We're gonna go to
1947.
47. And I'm going to start doing it a little different here. I'm going to start reading from Dr. The articles that Dr. Trauber put out in the 80s on the Jacket history. Starting in 1947, an all-electric scoreboard and clock presented to Springfield High School by Summers and Jenkins, which is a car dealership. And I think Summers Ford was here for years. A new stadium seats are nearing completion. The scoreboard will stand 18 feet in height and 12 feet wide, and will be located at the west end of Boy Smith Field. The new stadium seats are rapidly nearing completion and will cost approximately $9,000 when completed. The stands will seat an additional 2,500 people and will have a capacity of approximately 4,300. This is the next to last renovation there at Boy Smith Field. Eventually it'll get to 7,000. But right now they've got it up to 4,300. On August the 15th of 1947, Springfield began practice for their fall camp with Coach Boy Smith. He says he has a number of outstanding players that will be missed this following year. William McPherson, Joe Nixon, Rudy Miller, Horace Murphy, Cecil Chance, and Milburn Coursey and Vernon Ashley will be gone as the season will progress in 1947. Moving on, the Jackets open up against West High, and Springfield rolls to a win, 38-0. John Cron ran the opening kickoff back 20 yards to his own 40, and then the touchdown parade was on the way. It was Cron on every play, and he scored from the 6. He had missed the extra point, but the Jackets were off and rolling. The second drive started on a 40-yard pass from John Cron to Sonny Gray, who was alternating with Cron at tailback. Cron dived over from the 3. Later, J.B. Porter intercepted a West High pass, and Cron dashed 74 yards on the next play. The fourth march was a 60-yard affair with John Cron. He had a 3-yard run, and Sonny Gray passed to Albert McClanahan for the extra point. Later, Cron had another 52-yard run to the 2, and he scored from there as the Jackets rolled over west. The next ball game was Springfield versus Hillsboro, and Springfield defeated the Burros 31-0, leaving no doubt to the superior team. Coach Boy Smith Springfield Ball Club chalked up another victory over Hillsboro, 31-0. Led by John Cron, Springfield built up a 25-0 lead and then added another in the final frame. Meanwhile, the Burro offense, which had clicked the week prior in a 31-0 win over Bellevue, was held at bay by the hard-charging Springfield defense and forward wall. Besides Cron, Sonny Gray contributed to 2 other touchdowns, and Billy Head was in for kicking the extra points. Up next for the Jackets, Springfield thumped Father Ryan in a ball game 21-0 as Springfield picked up the win at Boy Smith Field. Sonny Gray, Springfield fullback, ripped off a 20-yard touchdown run. Also, John Cron garnered the other jacket counters, getting the second one on a 3-yard drive from tackle, and the third one on an 8-yard lateral from Sonny Gray. The Jackets held on for the 21-0 victory over Father Ryan, and they ran up their total points in 3 ball games to 90. For the Jackets, J.B. Porter, Billy Head played really strong on defense, holding the Panthers scoreless. Up next for the Jackets, it was a 25-6 win over TIS. John Cron gave Springfield their 4th straight victory over the NIL teams yesterday afternoon when the strong Robertson Countyans topped TIS 25-6 on the losers' field. Cron led the winners to a pair of speedy touchdowns in the first period on runs of 67 and 40 yards each.
I think it's funny, like you just said, the Robertson Countyans.
We're the only ones playing ball, probably, I guess. No, not in 47.
We have a lot of teams playing ball, but that just shows you the respect that the Springfield program had, that this only program that was honestly recognized by the Nashville Riders. Even right here, I'm looking at it. It says Springfield talking about that Father Ryan game you just talked about. 21 victory over Father Ryan Panthers at Boy Smith Field last evening. It was the Jackets' 3rd consecutive triumph over Nashville interscholastic teams, and is yet the Robertson Countyans have not yielded a single point.
Oh, we ruled it. When we played NIL, we were a charter member. Basically, we played so many of them.
Yep.
Anyway, but that's they wanted us to play tougher teams, and we did. Cron also had picked up. He carried the ball 19 times to pick up 130 yards. And returned 5 kicks, 88 yards, and intercepted 3 passes, besides scoring all 4 TDs. Pretty good game for Mr. John Cron, who, of course, was one of the great ones of Springfield history. Up next, the crippled Yellow Jackets will take on Isaac Litton. Well, it was just that. Isaac Litton defeated Springfield 13-0. You couldn't believe it, or maybe you could, unfolding before your eyes. More than 5,000 folks witnessed a Litton team which hadn't beaten and hadn't even scored on Springfield in an 11-year series was rolling over the Jackets.
11 years without getting scored on by a team.
And Isaac Litton was one of those teams that, they wanted us to play, and we did. And this is their 13-0 victory in 1947. And Coach Smith said they had the best team. They outplayed us all the way. That Duke boy is a mighty fine ball player. On the visitor side, Coach Bob Cummins was extremely happy with his lines picking up the win over the Jackets. Up next for the Yellow Jackets was NBA. Springfield bounces back from the Isaac Litton loss to defeat the Big Red 6-0. J.B. Porter, blocking back for the Yellow Jackets, scored on the second play of the Springfield's first time with the ball, traveling 35 yards on a quarterback sneak to give the Jackets a 6-0 victory over NBA. Coach Smith praised the work of Vernon Johnson, Jacket left tackle, who was easily the best lineman on the field. Vernon Johnson. Vernon's Restaurant. Anybody remember? Mr. Vernon Johnson. How about that? John Cron and Sonny Gray were both able to play for the Jackets. Cron had suffered a broken nose against Lytton a week ago, while Gray suffered a shoulder injury. That did hamper the Jackets a little bit, I guess, on that Lytton game. Up next for the Jackets was Goodlettsville, and the Jackets defeated Goodlettsville 40-0. John Cron, the Jacket tailback, tallied 3 times to lead the Springfield attack. All of his scores came upon the first half. Cron also passed to Billy Head for another touchdown in the third period as the Jackets rolled. Billy Matthews, Jacket tackle, was outstanding on defense for the Yellow Jackets. Up next was DuPont. Springfield defeated DuPont 26-6 as John Cron ripped the Bulldogs to threads in racking up touchdowns. Stopped stone cold on the ground. DuPont's lone marker was registered in the last quarter when the Bulldogs recovered a Jacket fumble on the 5, and Gene Davis scored for DuPont. Cron and B.F. Myers punched over 2 more touchdowns in the second half, and Cron's run of 72 yards was the longest of the game. Nice run, 72 yards for Mr. Cron.
With no face mask on his helmet. You got to remember, there's no face mask yet. And I'm going to put a picture up of Cron and Coach Smith, and you will see him, and there's no face mask on these helmets. It's not none until literally.
You're talking about the picture with the dog, right?
Yeah.
On the practice. Ain't that cool? That's a cool old dog there. I don't know what kind of dog it is. It don't state his name.
It just says John Cron and Coach and Pooch. We know his dog's name. The dog's name is Pooch.
There we go. As we move right along, a last-minute score give Clarksville an upset win over the Yellow Jackets, 12-7. The offensive play of John Cron was outstanding for Springfield, carrying the ball 28 times. He picked up 3/4 of his team's total yards rushing. For the Jackets, it was a superb outing by Billy Mitchell, a linebacker who time and time again stopped Clarksville running backs for no gain. Also, outstanding play for the Yellow Jackets was by Billy Head and Sonny Gray as the Jackets lost their final season ball game to Clarksville 12-7 to finish the 1947 year 7-2.
You got 8 seniors on this 1947 team. 3 juniors selected to the Nashville Banner All Middle Tennessee team. I think that speaks a lot that when you have that many seniors, but you also have 3 juniors, and for the first time in a few years, Coach Smith will be returning a lot of key guys, especially John Cron. And they coming off a 7-2 season, and Cron missed a game, didn't he, with injury?
Right.
And I feel like as we know, they're building up for 48, which is going to be a monster.
48 is going to be a good year for the Jackets, it looks like, and we'll jump into that as we move right along to 1948.